Okay, so welcome to part 2, where we're going to talk about crime news. What is it? So the media is the, sorry, wrong screen. This is the one we want. How many of you have ever been a victim of a crime or seen a crime occurring or had to go to court? Most of you won't. So where do you get your information about crime? Well, you get it from the media, which is where most people get it from. The volume of crime news varies over time and place. At the moment, think about what we're hearing in the news, and it's just all about the coronavirus. Before an election, all you're going to hear about is what different parties are going to do about crime. We've got a state election coming up in October, and that's already started with the opposition talking about law and order. Always a big issue when it's a state election. Okay, but how much we get varies over time and place. How many of you watch the news? Think about it, really watch the news. I need you to watch it 2 to 3 times a week this trimester. Read the papers, even if you do it online. See what is going on, because we're going to be talking about these sorts of things all the way through. But we get more crime news when crime is broadly defined as all forms of social deviance. For instance, do we ever hear about parking tickets? Does the news always ever start with the headline, 3,000 parking tickets were issued in Brisbane today? Okay, we don't get that. We don't ever hear about that. We always hear about murders. But what are some examples of social deviance? Think about that, because we're going to be covering what is social deviance in the next couple of weeks. So the media is the primary source of indirect knowledge of the crime problem. And it's important that you understand what the difference is between direct and indirect knowledge. So how many of you grew up in a rough neighbourhood? Think about where you grew up and how much crime you saw where you grew up. Where I grew up, which was a suburb in Brisbane, I didn't see much in the way of crime at all. So therefore, when I did hear about it, I thought it was really a little bit scary. But the difference is that direct knowledge will come from personal experience or the experiences of those people known to us. So if you've had neighbours that have had their house broken into or had their car stolen, that's direct knowledge. Watching it on the media is indirect knowledge. The way that crime is reported in the media can influence the way we think about it, because the way they report it and what they report is really selective. And the types of crimes and criminals reported in the media is what's called newsworthy. So they get to pick and choose what we actually get to see. The primary purpose of the existence of media companies in this country is to make money. So media ownership in Australia is really important, because the owners of the media always bring their own agenda to what we get to see. This is a for-profit industry. There are no ads on the ABC, BBC, ABC for Kids, so the ads are to make money. Why is that important? Well, as I said, it's important because they may use their TV station or whatever to push their own agenda. Who owns the media in Australia? Well, government media organisations are those owned by the government. And these are not trying to make a profit, so there's no ads. Think about countries like North Korea and Russia. Do you think that they actually ever see anything bad said about their leaders at all? Probably not. So the government-owned media in those countries control what the public get to see in the media. What's the problem with that? Aren't they looking out for all of us when they're just telling us what's going on and supporting their leaders? Well, probably not, because they're not presenting any criticism or other side of the argument. So here it's important for you to understand who owns what in Australia. So these commercial media organisations are all privately owned companies. A lot of them are on the share market, and they compete to make profits through advertising and program sales. So here's a list of who the main media owners are in Australia. So you've got the Murdoch family. Rupert Murdoch, who is actually an American citizen now, owns a number of Australia's major capital city newspapers, including the Herald Sun, the Daily Telegraph, and the Courier Mail. His son Lachlan Murdoch is a majority shareholder in Nova, Network 10, 93.7 FM and 5AA. I'm not sure what 5AA is, so it must be in another state. The Murdochs are considered to be the conservative side of politics, so a lot of their publications will present a conservative agenda in their reporting. Fairfax Group owns a number of capital city daily newspapers, including The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald, as well as a number of smaller regional newspapers and radio stations, including 2UE. Fairfax is considered to be on the left-hand side of politics, so they would be giving more of a left agenda in their editorials and their writings. Kerry Stokes is a major shareholder of Channel 7, the West Australian and WA FM. Do you think that people owning too much media could cause the same problems as Russia, where you don't get any balance to what is put onto their networks? The Packer family traditionally owned Channel 9 and Australian Consolidated Press, but they sold up most of that. James Packer did own at one stage a substantial share in the 10 network, but it is now wholly owned by the American network CBS through a company registered in the Netherlands. So Channel 10 is not owned by anybody Australian at all. Then you've got smaller ones like the Gordons, so they own a number of regional television stations throughout Australia, including WIN, 10 Mildura, Tasmanian Digital Television, and West Digital Television. Now, before I presented all this to you, did you even think for 1 second about who owns all of this media and makes a profit from it? Well, this little map gives you a snapshot of who owns what in Australia. Okay, so up in the top right-hand corner here, CBS Corporation 100% owns Channel 10. Lachlan Murdoch he 100% owns the Nova radio network, as well as being a co-chairman of News Corp in America, which is owned by his father. Okay, family owned, whatever that says down the bottom there. I've never heard of that group before. Janet Cameron owns another company called Grant. Kerry Stokes has a majority share in Channel 7 and the West Australian. John Singleton owns some of Macquarie Media. Channel 9 also owns some of Macquarie Media. And the network is 100% owned by Channel 9 itself. And Bruce Gordon owns these groups here. So for those of you who live in regional areas, you'll be very familiar with WIN. So why is it so important? Well, the media can play a big role in our decision making and the democratic process. They can have political influence over policy that is made in this country without a lot of political accountability. They do have corporate accountability, so they would be looked at by authorities such as ASIC, but they are brilliant at giving a community voice, especially in remote areas. So the ABC, for instance, runs a radio show every day called The Country Hour around lunchtime, and that's where they give the prices of crops and stock and provide information to farmers that they're not going to get from city radio stations. But think about it. What if someone like Barnaby Joyce owned the media? Do you think we would have heard anything about the woes with his marriage and his affair and having babies with someone that worked for him? Would we have heard anything about this? Of course we wouldn't. And that's why in countries like Russia and North Korea, you only hear what they want you to hear. So have a think about free speech in the media. Do we need the media to have free speech? So this little table here just gives you an indication of where a lot of the media in Australia sit. So you've got these groups here in the middle, in the centre, that are supposed to be quite balanced. The ABC certainly gets accused of not being balanced, as does the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. So a lot of people think that they are definitely more left-leaning than they are right. And these groups over here are said to be sitting at the right. Sky News definitely is of the right, although they are increasingly having a lot more people who have been Labor members of Parliament who are commentating to try and bring them back to being closer to the centre. But then you can look at the quality as well of these publications. So you've got The Guardian over there, which is mixed quality, but very much of the left. And some of these ones down here, like 60 Minutes, A Current Affair and Sunday Night, which are considered to be of the right, but very poor quality. This is just an international one, so I'm not going to comment too much on this one. It's just to give you a bit of a snapshot of where international publications sit as far as whether they're neutral, to the left or to the right. Okay, now we're going to move on to part 3, where we're going to discuss those newsworthy values that I told you about before.